It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! Today on Outside the Box Reviews, we are reviewing the Diamond Select Universal Monsters Deluxe Edition Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's Monster. While the packaging refers to the figure as Frankenstein, at least within the first few movies Universal did, it is Frankenstein's Monster, or the Frankenstein Monster. But the name Frankenstein has become synonymous with the monster, so I guess we just roll with it. This is the follow-up to last year's Diamond Select Universal Horror figure line. And last year we were given the Wolfman, the Mummy, and the Creature from the Black Lagoon. This year we have Frankenstein's Monster, Dracula, and the Bride of Frankenstein, which, in my opinion, is a much stronger lineup from the Universal character list than last year. Diamond Select has done a really good job of portraying Frankenstein's monster in this figure, so let's take a closer look and see the parts that make a monster. Now last year I did not feel the need to pick up any of the deluxe sets. Last year there were two. There was the Creature from the Black Lagoon that came with a woman and kind of a different display base, and a mummy in his coffin. Both of these figures lacked the articulation of their cheaper counterparts, and were really no better. This time, I really felt the need for the deluxe set for this creature alone, because it's the lab table. I mean, you can't get much more iconic Frankenstein than that. The lab table is really large, so I'm going to do my best to fit it onto the screen here. But do a little 360 of it. You can see it's really nicely detailed. Diamond did a great job with this. It has a very nice rusty look to it. There's all kinds of mechanisms under it. I mean, the Frankenstein lab in the movie, none of it really had a purpose. It just was over elaborate for the sake of being over elaborate. So this is perfect off the screen. I would have liked it if it would actually have raised up, so you could have the monster bound to the table and raised up on it to display him better, because honestly it'll take up a lot less depth to have the table up like this almost. But that's not the way they wanted you to have it. It comes in a lot of different pieces. The tabletop itself is a separate piece. Each side of the legs here are separate. This crossbar and the wheels are separate, and this piece here. So there's a good amount of assembly, and I actually had to look at the instructions. Normally, the stereotypical man, I gotta assemble it, how I feel it goes together, but I kind of had to look at the instructions for this one. There's a lot of just random pieces, and kind of hard to tell where they all went. Oh, and this piece was separate as well, the head holder. But this is an awesome accessory. It's gonna look great up on the shelf as a display piece. It's a little on the large side, so if you don't have a lot of room to do this, you may want to think twice about it, but it's just a fantastic accessory. Moving on to the figure itself, I think Diamond did a pretty solid job. I've yet to ever pick up any of their Marvel Select figures. I do have the feeling, though, that those are a little nicer quality than what they've been giving us with this Universal line, which is a little sad. I know Marvel kind of has the deeper pockets, I'm sure, when it comes to licensing and all that stuff. I know Universal probably doesn't give a crap as much about their licensing. It seems that way, honestly. But I think Diamond did an okay job. The Frankenstein, I think, is very much the best of the bunch. I haven't actually got my hands on the other two yet. That'll probably change by the time this video may even be uploaded. But the Frankenstein's monster is really nice. They did a really nice job of giving it color. Sometimes I think it's a little dicey to take a black and white character and bring him into color. I was a little disappointed with how they did the Wolfman, but they did a pretty good job here. The skin tone is the stereotypical green. It's kind of more of a sickly green than the Ninja Turtles green that's kind of become the stereotype of the Frankenstein monster. It looks really nice. The face bears a pretty good resemblance to Boris Karloff. I think this is the best head sculpt they've done. They seem to be really good with the Karloff sculpt. The Mummy last year was a pretty nice sculpt as well. The other faces they seem to struggle with a bit. I don't know if it's because they have better rights to the Karloff likeness or what, but it definitely shows. Got some nice detail. This is the monster's head from the original movie, as telltale by the fact that he only has the one head staple up here. In Bride of Frankenstein, he is burnt, and you could see the other staple. He's actually missing his hair for a lot of the movie. There are about 3 of these in the store that I picked him up at, my local comic shop. And the wash, you can see here there's almost a reddish-purple wash on his head. It varied greatly between figures. One of them had a ton, the other one barely had any, and I'll say this, both of those looked awful. This one was my Goldilocks pick, it was just right, and I think if you have the opportunity to look at these in person and pick out the best wash, I would highly recommend doing that, because the one without wash really just looked blank and unexpressive, and the other one just looked muddled and confused. I think this one is still vaguely on the verge of too much wash, especially around the eyes. It kind of confuses everything and darkens it a little too much. But it still works. It's still a really good representation of Jack Pierce's makeup and doesn't detract from it too terribly. Turn around and give you a quick shot of the back of the head. Nothing too spectacular here, basically what you'd expect. He's got his trademark bolts on the side of the neck. He has his black shirt here, and his green overshirt, which is very nicely done. I like the color, I like the just gentle weathering they've done on it. It's also kind of a softer plastic, not particularly loose fitting, but it will bend a little bit. Continued on to the sleeves here, which movie accurately stopped very short of his wrists. You can see he has the seam on the wrist that is not an articulation point, that is just a seam from the movie where his hands are attached. This hand looks pretty normal. The other hand, you can see down his wrist, he has a metal bar. I don't particularly remember that from the movie, but I'll have to check it out again and see if that's there. The hand itself is a little odd. It looks deformed. It looks almost like they took fingers and moved them to the side. I don't remember that from the movie either. Once again, I should know this. I just watched the movie about a week ago, but I honestly don't remember his hand looking like this. I don't know if it's a defect of the toy, a defect of the sculpt, or just an artist's interpretation of the monster. The hands are a place where I feel that wash gets a bit heavy. All of them, it was a bit heavy. The fingernails even are tipped in the red-purple wash, which is a bit too much. Continue down here with his pants. Very long brown pants. They also have them very high up on his waist. And then his famous, big, thick Frankenstein boots. Take a look at the back. There's not much extra going on there. Pretty cut and dry. Before I get into articulation, I want to say that this guy came out of the package with about 50% of his joints stuck. The only ones that were free when I got him out was a very, very stiff ball joint in the head. It has since loosened up. It doesn't go back very far. It's hindered by the hair and the head sculpt, but it will look down, and you can get some good left and right out of it. He's also limited by these bolts, which is what I'm really afraid of, because I feel if you took it and tried to turn it too hard, you might snap those off. The other bit of articulation that was movable was his ankle rotation. His feet seem awfully close together in this sculpt, and I've seen pictures online where they appear to be spread out just a bit more, and you can kind of pull them out like that. And I wonder if mine are just stuck a little too close together. Now, as for the stuck articulation, the easier one to break free was his wrist articulation, or arm articulation, I guess we should call it, since it's way back here. I do like that they put the joint there so they're able to get the cut in the wrist, even though a cut joint there would have looked just fine, I think, and actually been a part of the intended sculpt, but it works having it up inside the arm. These are fairly stiff, but the ones that were the worst was the last bit of articulation, which were the arms. I was so afraid these were going to break off on me. They were so stiff, and they started doing that thing. Anybody who's dealt with stiff joints on a figure, I don't know if anybody else has had this experience, but you start turning the joint, and it's moving, but it's moving in a weird way. It doesn't feel like the peg inside's moving. It feels like you're just rotating the arm off of its peg. And that's always a scary moment where it feels like you're just going to rip the arm right off. So I stuck him in some hot water, let those joints loosen up. It took quite a while to get those shoulders loosened. So if you pick one out of the package, I'm having a Predator flashback. You need to get this guy in some nice hot water and get him loosened up. The articulation is pretty minimal, which is kind of disappointing, but it's what I expect coming from one of these figures. They really haven't had a whole lot of articulation in the past, and I wasn't really expecting all that much. Some elbow articulation would have been fantastic. If you were a fan of last year's Diamond Select figures, this one is going to be a must for you. It's much better than anything we got last year. If we bring in Karloff as the Mummy, and we hold him just high enough to get his feet level with the boots, you can see it's a pretty even height with the character, and the face sculpt is done pretty consistently. I would definitely recommend this figure, but I really do hope that a company that could treat it a little better will end up getting the license sometime in the future. If NECA got the license to these guys, it would be fantastic. The sculpts would be better. The likenesses rights would have to be figured out. I know they probably wouldn't bother if they couldn't get the likenesses spot on. And the articulation would probably be a lot better than this too. But this is what we got. And for a figure you're going to put on a shelf and have displayed, it works. It looks good. And I really can't knock it. This has been another Outside the Box review. Stay tuned for more to come.